illustrated. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. On the bitch you hated, infatuated. Yeah. On the plate you tasted, well intoxicated. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. You're the fire starter, twisted fire starter. My detonator. Yeah. I'm the one infected, twisted animator. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter. I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter.
Wow, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. You see that comet right there? Maybe not. I think that's probably just my monitor having some bounce back. But what a world we're jumping into. The triple B credit rating, the big, beautiful, adding multi-trillions dollar bill. Not sure if that thing passed or if it is what's happening with it, but the conjecture is it's going to pass. And so far, if you're not aware, the dollar has lost 7% of its purchasing power just in this last 1 year alone. That means that everything that you're buying, or at least 7% more expensive. So let's see, that makes sense why my water bill has doubled. The county doubled the price of the water. And also the electricity rising 50%. And my auto insurance, as we talked about last week, had increased a good 10% as well. It's hard to escape these changes. So where does it take us from here is the question. It's kind of like we can see where there's a little wiggle room between now and 2030, but it seems that 2030 is the mark where the world will absolutely shift into something else. Now, we still have 4 years to build ourselves a life raft, for a better term. So that's what we're here to discuss tonight. You know, thank you for joining us, spending your valuable time here. Coming into the holiday, there's so much, you know, history and culture and, you know, so many descriptors around this holiday and what it means, why we're here, why we can say what we want. I mean, you look at Europe, the nightmare occurring over there with free speech, banning crypto, police banging down your door for memes, all those people arrested in Germany for saying that I don't like this politician. I mean, it's the point of oligarchs and kings, back to the point, like the king's men came to the door because you insulted the king's chicken and said that it had a couple of disheveled feathers and how dare you. And this is kind of the world that we moved into. Half the world has gone completely totalitarian again in these places you didn't think they would. So where are the safety spots on the planet is more, you know, and how do you get there if the dollars are devaluing? And I saw a great chart where the Bitcoin price in US dollar was exactly mirroring what was seen in the Weimar Republic hyperinflation, 1923, about where it was, where it pivoted to that rocket off point where it went from between a 10 and 100 for a US dollar up to a million, then 10 million, and then 10 billion. Kind of, we're in that point where the cusp of 10 turning into 100 over the next few months, 6 months, and then it rockets from there up. So we're at the very cusp of the hyperinflation. If you're measuring a Bitcoin USD price, big, beautiful, whatever monstrosity, not political, but I mean, the amount of money that needs to be printed for this is going to take our country into a place it doesn't want to be. They're going to try to substitute stable coins to, save the US dollar. All that's going to do is confuse people and milk wealth from the general populace as we move through this. So you can choose your party of red, blue, donkey, elephant, but greenbacks is what really the party that we should be choosing. This is going to add 4 trillion over the next 2 years. So if we think we're at 37 trillion, I don't know if you saw the US debt clock. We just crossed over that a week and a half ago. 37 trillion, and this is going to take us to 41 trillion plus. Well past the rollover of us even being able to pay the interest off with everything that is collected in terms of taxes, IRS, tariffs, everything within the United States. That won't be enough to pay the interest because we have all the Medicaid, Medicare, all these Social Security, all these other liabilities. And when you add in the revenues coming in from all sources in America, we will not have enough just to even pay the interest. So at that point, what happens is more the question, and you can see why our dollar is devaluing. 7% since the beginning of the year, that would earmark us for something if it stays the same at about 14 to 15% by the end of the year that we would have lost in purchase power. And thank you for putting that up there, Ransom. That's very kind of you. U.S. national debt, and I cannot really say much more. It continues, and so since that time, we've already come up 58 billion since the rollover. And that was just literally, there it is again, the semaphore. That was a great article. If anybody hasn't read into it, it came off a Drudge Report and then it popped right over to this article off semaphore.com. US dollar is on track for its worst year in modern history. Well, if you go back to 1776, does that count as modern history? It does on a 10,000 year time scale since the Younger Dryas era until present. But modern history, if we're sandwiched in the last 100 years, which most climatological records are based on, and what you're hearing with the global warming is all based on 100-year climate history versus the millions that we have on the planet, or the last 10,000, which we have exited the Younger Dryas. We had that calamity, comets slamming into the ice sheet and then dropping temperatures back. After we already exited out of the ice age, there was a re-entry into it subsequent, and then a quick rebound out of it. So I don't know, Ransom, take it away. I'm curious what you think about modern history here. It just doesn't really sit well. I know there's a lot of cutting of pork and all these, different things that were found in Doge, and there's a huge amount of cutting, but it's never going to outrun what it is with the entire amount of debt and issuance. And I just don't know how they're going to be able to pull this off without sending us into hyperinflation. So I'll leave it there. Welcome to the show, everybody. Happy July 4th.
Right. There's no telling, but there's no arguing that there's been a dollar bubble waiting to pop long before Trump came along with any of these policies. It's just the way that we do business here in the Federal Reserve United States of America. It's always been like it. And everywhere you go around the world, they're all dealing with their own version of the central banks. So it's they that really have the stranglehold on what's going on. And actually, this big, beautiful bill, as they call it, it puts us into way more debt. There's a lot of spending that one could argue, though, that may pay off in the end. There's a lot of tax cuts. So there's two sides to every story there. It's just whether or not you're looking at it from which side and which one's actually going to pan out, minus any saboteurs to programs or things like that. There's no doubt that we're cutting a lot of spending, but then again, we're in other areas, they're doing the exact opposite. We're going to go, full throttle with spending. I was kind of wanting to get into this right here. I don't know if you saw this. You might have seen it. It's the National Blueprint for Biodefense. Now, this is kind of like the Event 201 when you get into that. If you remember what that was last time, this is a bipartisan commission on the biodefense of the United States here, and it's the National Blueprint for Biodefense. This is the actual paper right here. The interesting part kind of gets into, let's see here, the scenario. If I can scroll down there, I was trying to make it big so everybody could read it. But down here on number 3, I can get there. And by the way, this was signed by Tom Ridge. If you know who Tom Ridge is, what happened here? It disappeared.
Oh, that was me, Ransom. Sorry, I'm trying to add a new screen in to get ready to pop up some articles with you. Apologies.
No, that's all right. You go ahead. There it is.
No, let's go back on that.
Here it is, the scenario. So this scenario, it basically, if you read this, it talks about they have fixed all of the things that they made a mistake with during the last kind of go round of biodefense from the National Biodefense Commission. But look at the date here, that their fictional date. It gets into, well, tomorrow. This is when they say it happens, right here, July 4th
No,
of
you're
2025.
You're kidding me.
Bioterrorist attacks of July 4th. I'm not saying that this is going to happen. It's just that whenever these think tanks get together and talk about these things in the past, well, sometimes, random events seem to coalesce and collide.
Collide. Hey,
Yeah,
colloidal.
if I can just smush those words together. But that seems to happen. But really, it's funny to look across the thing, because I feel like, Nostradamus just sometimes. Remember, when we talked a lot, just basically every week, about AI and the surveillance state and how your biometrics will mix up with your driver's license and, your money. This is a story out of Tennessee, and I'll get into why I don't like this. It's scary. I'm not defending this kid that's in this story, but anyway, let's just work off of the headline itself. U.S. teen caught bullying could lose his driver's license. Right, so something that has nothing to do with driving.
Yep.
And this is in Tennessee here.
Yeah, being in Tennessee,
interstate.
this is one of the biggest stories going on here right now for like local media.
Right, and I can kind of see why. I mean, in a way, because what this is insinuating is that the government has powers to kind of crisscross and mismatch aspects of civilization to get a goal that they want. Now, I know that this is just one instance of one kid doing whatever they're doing, but the idea that something that has nothing to do with driving could affect your ability to drive around. And here's not this one.
No, let me stop you, Ransom. Also, at schools too, they're like, oh, you're off school or off campus tweets count as your penalization at school, even though it has nothing to do with school. You never mention the name of where you went. Just your ill thought or your verboten speech is enough to get you suspended or something at schools now. And that goes right back in with the Real ID too, where they want to cross every single agency in the United States. And that's the only possible way this bullying thing could work, is if they're interagency operability and connectivity.
Absolutely.
Which is scary. So just say no to the star.
And this is the exact, this is where it goes right here. This is British police test AI system. And this is another prediction of mine, that they would use AI literally for, policing people based on different groups of metadata. So metadata from your personal life, metadata from your online digital persona, and etc. Your banking, your political ties, all of that is rolled up into one report. It's a social credit score. And now they have given this AI system all of this information without your permission. And this is from another country, but it includes metadata from every other country. So they're keeping track of everybody, just like China. And we'll get to that because, matter of fact, there's a story I want to get to here about the Chinese. When they come here to the United States, they interviewed a bunch of these Chinese people, and they felt and saw the exact same surveillance spy state that they left in China. They saw it here. They saw all the beginnings of it everywhere they went. They
Yeah.
saw it. And they were pointing out that it's literally no different. It's just the other side of the coin. It's presented different. It's camouflaged different, but it's the same thing. So here's
And a lot, a lot of people are saying the same thing. Anybody that came from a socialist nation
Yeah,
has this exact same mirrored thought as you're saying there, that they see the workings of it coming
right.
in here, of things they used to escape. I have a neighbor who's from Poland, and he was telling me, David, is very scary. We left many, many years ago to get away from that. And then, he's late 70s, and he was telling me, and when they were younger and they escaped from that whole communist shenanigans over there, that came here, and he's like, I'm terrified because that has followed us. It's the exact same thing that he saw when he was a younger man happening right now, again, here in America. He and I
Right.
talk all the time. He's a cool guy.
Yes, and this circles back to the what we were talking about a minute ago. This is hidden in the big beautiful bill. The spending in there. This is all hidden. The same type of programs over here. So what this program is basically the British government have allowed this AI to absorb as much metadata from any source, law enforcement, public, online, like all your social medias, to determine what kind of person you are and put you in a little category that in the future will be used to debank you and decitizen you, especially if you're from one of the countries with the programs. So here's
Gotta have
another
crypto, man.
Here's another one of my Nostradamus moments, that AI would soon decide who gets hired and fired. And here it is. Managers are using AI to determine raises, promotions, and layoffs. So, like I've been harping on, there's people kind of hiding behind the AI tools that now allow them to do things in an impersonal way and just kind of get away with it and move to the numbers. But it's more than that, because at some point, the person that's this manager part gets taken out of the equation. Then the corporation just decides from the top level on down who gets hired, who doesn't get hired, how much you make, and what job. Next will be what job you're allowed to do based on some kind of test like an ASVAB or an IQ test or a combination of those. And they will rule you out of entire swaths of things that you thought DEI was bad. What about the reverse of DEI, which is basically an ultimate
IED.
system? Yeah, an ultimate system that processes data and judges you based on previous experience, your social media, and test scores that you might have to take to apply for a job, given to you and tested by an AI. That's where we're going. So the whole thing is being streamlined with AI in any stretch of the imagination. Now, I wanted to talk about
I
this for
took
a
the
minute.
QI test also. I scored high, super.
Right. Everybody's losing their mind over the supposed alligator Alcatraz. I just did a little, like maybe 10 minutes studying of the area, the topographical map, the whole thing. It's a hoax. In my view, this is a hoax. It's already flooding. Right? It's already flooded out. Nobody has gone to this thing. Now, today I saw them loading alligators outside of it.
I know, I saw
Supposedly.
that too, all those fake alligators in that little trench around the side of it. Like, what
So
the hell are you guys
this is,
doing?
I
A
think
fake
that
photo op of real alligators plunged into a pool, like, it's like, what the piranha pond or something. What?
I feel like that the federal government is doing two things at once. It's a psyop, but on top of that, they're trolling people, right? Because look over here to the
And
next one.
protecting the wildlife.
Right. Alaska suggests bear Alcatraz for migrants to be detained. Um, but if you have studied history, see, I get that a lot of people are worried about this, and they should be. And it's not because of the migrant question. It's the question on whether or not these facilities should exist for anyone. So, if you look back in history, whether it was the Russians, the Germans, the Americans, the Chinese, it doesn't matter. They put these kind of prisons in really crappy places, right? And it's on purpose, because they, in their view, at the time, they're sending criminals to that place. Why are they supposed to have a great time there? Like the American kind of prison system now in some places is basically you get to go to a condo that's private. You got internet, you got a TV, you get good meals, you got a gym. These are like the minimum restrictions. But then at the same time, there's hellholes where people are locked in, steel boxes of solitary confinement with no amenities whatsoever except for their mattress. And then you have these places. So do you really think that we're going to load? And I would tend to say no, that it's like a trolling or a psyop. However, history argues that at some time and at some point, if you build something, they will use it. Now, these things are all over the place. It's just not in Florida. It's not, it's not a Florida or Alaska thing. Those are the ones, kind of getting on the headlines right now. But then when you go over to China,
Wait, Ransom, can I stop you for a second? I want to come back to that camp thing here. And if you could do me a favor and look up the Rhine River camps, and this is post-World
right.
War II, RHINE River camp.
All right. While I do that, you just read that headline. This
China
is
to triple number of Uyghur organ harvesting centers. Yep, I saw that one too.
So, okay, I
No,
might
wait a
be.
second. Your organs can be harvested for as little as a tweet or a spout out against the government policy. Something as innocuous as reporting financial data can now get your organs harvested. Because before I lived and worked in China for a while, and this is just before the Olympics occurred. This is 2008. It was pretty like light gloves at that time, but you could see this thing steamrolling. They used to, in the beginning, they called it Sesame Credit, and it was fun and it was voluntary. And then before they turned it into the social credit score, which we know now, in the beginning, to introduce it to the populace, it was called Sesame Credit. And again, it was all voluntary, and they made it fun and gamifiable, and it was just like, ooh, see what your score is, right? At that time, any kind of blogger that was like a food blogger or a financial blogger, they were totally left alone as long as you didn't say anything against the government. But now today, they are actually arresting financial bloggers that are not saying anything about government policy. They're just simply showing a graph and saying, well, China GDP declined from last year. Auto sales from BYD, which is a main company over there doing a lot of EVs and stuff, decline. The export totals going out on the outbound sales for BYD electric vehicles is down from last year, and it's below the 5-year average by 5%. They're being arrested for putting those graphs out now. So whatever's going on in China, it's totally jumped the shark to kind of hands off, and you never would have thought arresting a blogger just for showing a simple graphic like this. Unreal. But these camps, the Rhine River camps, those of you in America here, and I want to talk about World War II for a second, we're always given this RHINE, Rhine River, RHINE. Yeah. We're always taught that we're the good guys, and we're always so good, and we protect human rights, and we do all these things. Now, the Rhine River camps were post-World War II, as after we captured and, the Germans had surrendered. We didn't just like let them go back into Germany. See that picture, that second one there with the soldier, it says right there, that one, take a look at that. Those are German soldiers out there in open fields that we made them sleep in the mud. And our soldiers would go through with bulldozers every so often and bury them alive if they were digging holes to try to get out of the weather. They were shot on sight, starved on sight. Those are all German soldiers post-World War II that they didn't have anywhere to put, and they wouldn't let them return to the cities. So there was hundreds of these camps all up and down the Rhine River. And, they went through multiple seasons. So people were starving to death. They were freezing to death. They were, heat exhausted and passed out and died from heat, not enough water. Dysentery was running through these places. And you know how American soldiers were, you killed my friends. And then, I don't care about you. But anyway, when they would start to dig like holes and trenches to get out of the weather, we would just go bulldoze them and bury them alive. And then, it's so ridiculous, these Rhine River camps, as what had occurred after World War II. I know there was a lot of animosity and hostilities, fighting in things. But the way they treated those million soldiers or so when they put them in these no concentration camps on the side of the river, and when the floods came, they just wouldn't let them out. And they just let them drown. It was kind of, this whole rollover of Rhine River camps. So if you think that somebody's going to be kind just because you think they're promoting human rights in a country, when it comes down push to shove, there's going to be some hard pipe hitters in there that they're just going to let it go. And whatever happens, happens. Like you mentioned, all through history, anytime these facilities are put into usage, they never stop really until a complete turn of the government. Do you think Russia, when they sent them up somewhere in Siberia, how long are those camps go? They're still going. You know, that's where they still send political dissidents some 70, 80 years after, up in the Arctic there, in the tundra. You know, these camps and facilities are still operational. So how long is it going to take? Another century before they stop using them? It's not. Once they start, like, it's great for everybody who supports Trump and thing, awesome. But realize we are just on a minuscule 4-year turn of politics here in America. So in 4 years, if things don't go right and then we get the donkey party back in, what if they come start rounding everybody up and start arming all of their people to come and arrest all these former Trump supporters and put them in the camps? And then somehow it gets too bad after 8 years, and then another person comes and goes, oh, we got to put all the Democrats in the camps this time and let all of our people free. And this is routinely the swinging of the pendulum through history. It is a very dangerous situation. It's great for your rah-rah squad that you support right now, but there's such short-term thinking. That's like poisoning a well out in the middle of the desert somewhere because you're the family you don't like next door. Well, what about 50 years from now? Subsequent 2 generations from now? Like you wouldn't poison a well because everybody drinks from that. It's the same like cut off your nose to spite the face kind of thing. You know, I think it's just all being repackaged, like you said, into a very different, acceptable, passable, yay, let's do it. But as some of these things are actually meant for those people who are supporting the yay, let's do it. Give them a few more years, another turn of politics, and you're going to see that those camps, you were duped into supporting them, and now you're in them.
Yeah, it was just less than 4 years ago that they were talking about rounding up patriotic people and putting them in places like that. And now everybody's crying about it. And, you know, my point, like I said, I think in the here and now, they're not going to put people in that thing in Florida. If they do, I'm going to have to admit that that would be completely idiotic. It's already flooding now. They're not even having a hurricane. Plus, you know, it'd be just like, you know, exactly what you were talking about. There's this great movie called The Long Way Home, and it's about a guy that got arrested in East Germany and got sent to the gulag, and him and a bunch of other people, they escaped the gulag, and they almost died from freezing, almost died from getting eaten by wolves. When they got in southern Russia, they almost died from mosquitoes if it wasn't for the local villagers helping them out, telling them what plant to use. And then they had to go through Mongolia and then the desert of China before they eventually walked into freedom in India, and then had to, you know, the guy had to travel all the way around to West Germany. And by the time he got there, they had already started allowing people to come back. So he went back to his house that he originally got arrested from. You know, like it took him 20 or 30 years to get back home after escaping a gulag. And, you know, like I said, in the here and now, I actually think that they're kind of trolling people with this. And I would think that people weren't stupid enough to put people in a location like that. I would think that would get into, you know, like Nuremberg type of arguments legally. And then this other one, I don't know. You know, I'm split. I think that if you're going to deport them. We don't need to be holding them here and playing with people and, you know, spending money on feeding them and housing them in extreme, you know, locations. But the fact that they're made, and then people forget that there's all kinds of other FEMA type areas that are ready for housing. I'll just put it that way. And, you know,
yeah, I remember that ransom too. Like all those FEMA detention centers are all out there too. But how do you get people to support building more of these holding centers while you really haven't built the maximum capacity for what's going to be needed for holding the American people, whatever side that lies on? You got they're repackaging it to build it out even further. So at what point does it collapse in on itself and that black hole forms and everybody gets sucked into it?
Well, right. And I was kind of making the point that, you know, there are a lot of differences, of course, between us and communist China. However, there are a lot of similarities. And that's what I was talking about when they were interviewing the Chinese citizens. This is what's happening back in their country. They do have, you could call, concentration camps where people meet horrible ends. But it's like the whole Doomsday thing. While stuff like that's happening in the background, on the headlines, they're trying to either scare you or predictive programming.
Yeah, the
One never
5th
knows.
coming up. The big earthquake's on the 5th.
Right. So you got these guys, you know, scaring people with their fictional tale of bioterrorism attacks on the 4th of July. And then you also got the manga Doomsday prediction spooking everybody about a giant hurricane. I mean, tsunami and earthquake there. But then
It's
you
July
also
5th. So anybody out there, it's July 5th coming up in 2 days or 3 days.
And then you got this, our third interstellar object barreling through our solar system. So could, gonna go whip past the sun. Last time this happened, whatever object it was came and slowed down almost to a complete stop near Earth and then took off really fast again. So this one's just speeding through. I would think that this is just some kind of rock. But it puts
It's
it
Comet Ison for anybody taking notes of that last slowdown. And Comet Ison, ISON. Actually, that was some of my first videos I ever did on YouTube, was following that one.
right. And then you had the Moo Moo or Mau Mau or whatever they called that thing. And here's the third one. So this kind of stuff really messes with people's psyche, especially when they have that cabin fever fear mentality. They're dying for something new to happen. They don't even care if it is a pandemic or some kind of civil war. And then I wanted to move to this idea while they're pushing all of these, and you notice all these new names are popping up.
Yep.
The Planetary Defenders, and you got the the Commission on Bioterrorisms, and it just goes on and on. But
Yeah, can we watch the animation you just had there to see how when's it's going to be
yeah.
reaching perihelion, or we could see it with our, because it should be the Earth. Yeah, once it comes, okay, right there is where you'd see it.
Watch it smack into Jupiter. No, I'm just joking. It doesn't look like it's going to hit anything. It really
No,
looks like
probably
it's going
shouldn't.
to.
Okay, there it goes, and then where our closest approach is right there, and it'll be going out.
It looks like
Also going below the ecliptic. Okay.
right. If it looks like if you wanted to just fly by and get a nice snapshot of what was happening in our solar system, this is what you would do.
Yeah, because look how it misses Jupiter. You'd think Jupiter would gravitational tug would have pulled that in or to perturb that a little bit. If it's a small space rock, Jupiter should affect that as it's going out. It got really close. I mean, that's interesting.
Right. So, but they put out all of these things at once, and they know people are reading it. Like you and I are reading this stuff. Millions of people, billions maybe, are reading these ideas. If not, they're watching television or they're on their social media app getting their news that way. But either way, what they're really doing, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, is we're supplying that said AI policing system with all the data it needs to literally read our minds. And I've brought this up before, that there's, all these different machines that do different things now based on AI algorithms. They can see what picture you're thinking. They can type out what words you're thinking. They can even partially show what's in a dream. But now, you just got mind reading AI that predicts what you're going to do. And it's pretty accurate. And this just circles,
Wait,
circles
that's to
around.
it's to stop shoplifters. So it's for the betterment of everybody.
I think it also would be able to tell if somebody was holding on to a real secret about our times. It would know right when they were about to tell everyone, or like if you were maybe stocking up for an event and you did a lot of shopping and prepping, it knows what you're thinking, basically what you plan on doing with that. And then you got this system which takes all that information and puts it into a folder. So you got all of these folders in different nations, not even the one that you're doing. So this is the future of who's going to have a job, who's going to have money, who's going to own property, all of that stuff. It's all rolled into this idea. And I keep coming back to the fact that here it is. There is
I knew you were going to pull that one out. I was just waiting for it.
Right, because last time I was talking about artificial DNA or synthetic DNA, and that
for code
topic,
storing or information storage.
right? For code storing, you can build any product, anything you wanted, and down to its smallest part has enough information to create the entire thing. So, and we predicted this exact thing. So this is one step beyond mRNA technology. This is completely from scratch created, and look at how they title it right here. artificial human DNA. So we're now in that era. So this is going to cover everything from treatments of any kind of ailments. This is going to cover like replacing organs. This is going to cover, so basically they can inject this into you. It'll fill in the spaces of the organ that's dying or having, I forgot what the word is. It necrops. I already forgot the word. Anyway, rotting tissue inside the body. Necropsy, I think. I don't know.
Well, that's going to put
Whatever
the
the name is.
Chinese organ harvesters out of business, man.
You would think, but this can also be used for anything, literally, to replace anything. This is the next level of messenger RNA. This is messenger DNA. So basic, and it's completely synthetic. This didn't come from, the creator or any of those ideas.
Right. And then this allows you to live to be well more than 100. This will probably put you into 130, 140 year lifespan range if you were to do this. So if you're going to repair
And
everything in your body, if this can repair telomeres where they don't continue to shorten, then you're looking at infinite lifespans here. Perhaps this is what the Anunnaki kings had in their blood. And
this is also something that you could write code in to allow it to connect to the Wi-Fi or whatever system you're using. So this is it. This is what the proof of the merger of technology and biology. We're at that step. So in the background, everybody's fighting over their little political ideas, their tribal ideas. They are building something that you cannot even conceive in the background. And you can call it anything you want, but alien is the correct term. Alien, artificial. And it's funny because we're talking all the way up to an entire human being. That's why they put that name right in there, artificial human. So what are you going to do?
Takes it into the transhumanist agendas then, doesn't it? So imagine using this. Now, if you were to incorporate this to have your lifetime expanded or to fight disease or do something like this, then you become the product and property of the corporation that has patented that technology. You're no longer a synthetic human. You are owned completely by the corporation then, and they will probably extract some sort of royalties out of you per year. Now, do they have the technology where they can actually turn it off once it's in your body? Because I was watching Black Mirror the other night and I saw the craziest episode where this woman was going to die. She had like some brain aneurysm / stroke seizure thing. And they come in and we have this new medical technology and you can implant this thing. And they implanted it into her and then she came back to life again. And, you had to pay by the month. It was like a monthly subscription. And they had different tiers for you to stay alive and still be functional. If you got the lowest tier, they included advertisements in your speech. So you'd be talking and somebody would talk about marshmallow or chocolate and they'd be like, oh, well, Cadbury chocolate, that's one of the best ones you can buy. And then you'd snap back in and be like, yeah, and what were you saying about yesterday? But you had to opt out of that. You had to pay for a higher tier so you could get out of the advertisements in your speech of the lexicon. And it was, a pay by stay alive model. I'm telling you that Dark Mirror or that Black Mirror episode is mirroring literally, no pun intended, what that article was just there. You are going to be property of a corporation. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Well, you kind of you exactly started talking about what I was going to bring up next.
You saw that Dark Mirror or that Black Mirror episode?
No, but the idea's been out there.
Live model.
I didn't see that one, but the idea's been out there. There's a movie called Repo Man that goes around and gets the mechanical organs out of people because they didn't make the payments. But that was actually my next point, was that before they're coming up with these DNA treatments and other things, the problem with that is those are based on humans that were alive, humans that existed. And whenever the courts ruled that you can't copyright a DNA because the leaf is still part of the tree, that put them in a weird position. But now they have a way around that because this will not be from a human being. This will be completely created from scratch, and therefore it can be copyrighted. And if you're coding, we all know about hidden code and back code and things like that. So there won't be just, straight up give you a piece of DNA that will repair you or heal you or make you live longer. There will be a lot of strings attached. And you got to ask yourself, if they can do that, then obviously they can control your behavior once you are connected literally to that grid in this way. This is a whole nother level of what I've been talking about combining humans and technology. We went through the steps, and notice those steps were all brought to you public in the last year or the last 2 years. Okay, we can bond brains with a chip, and we can get processing power. Okay, well, we can put a brain in a jar. Okay, we can just synthetically write the entire organism, and we can put it in an ecto-life, baby factory and grow yourself a whole army of whatever. So the question is are we going to allow that, or are they going to start passing bills like in Texas to ban, fake meats, lab grown meats, and all of these other things? Everything is now fake. I mean, including yesterday, I was watching, them really pushing this diamond commercial about their lab grown diamonds, and it just kept making me think, yeah, there's lab grown hearts and lab grown diamonds and lab grown computers. Everything is now in the hands, and we're at that singularity. Obviously we've passed it. What's going on now is a psychological campaign to steer what we do next with the information that they're slowly leaking out. So we're already in the next era. They're just getting you used to it incrementally because the human brain has a hard time absorbing so much change at once that we would fight it. But if you let it, trickle, and then people are like, oh yeah, I read that last year. It's not a big deal to them anymore. The epiphany that they had about how it's revolutionarily going to change the world you live in kind of loses its lackluster over the year. And then the next year they impress you with something else. So the question is what are they about to pop out with this summer? And I think
I got you something here. Let me get on this new scene here. I got you something. Let me pop in.
All right.
See if I can go with something here. Let's jump in and shoot. Where are you at? Let's see. Screen. See if I can find it. Oh, there it is. Okay, let's share it up. There you go. FDA rubber stamps approval of lab-grown salmon. That's what we need, isn't it? Cell-cultured salmon fish, straight to the plate. So when you read about it, it's all the newest FDA has cleared the first ever lab-grown fish for sale in the United States. And if we take a look at the date on this one, that's June 12th. So this is relatively new. And Wild Type is a California-based food tech company and is approved now to serve its cell-cultivated coho salmon. So I don't know why the USDA would allow you to do lab-grown fish, but they approved lab-grown meats or lab-grown steaks. So right here's what the FDA, our Food and Drug Administration, hopefully there's an overhaul in this agency as well, because they've gone way off the shark here. The safety of wild type salmon. See how because you almost, if you didn't, you go wild salmon, wild type salmon. You see how the lexicon in there, if you're not paying attention, oh, wild salmon, yeah, I'll take that one. Wild type salmon. Based on the data, this is from the FDA, and information presented in Wild Type's pre-market safety submission, which I would like to see that also, but not available for the public. You're not privy to see what you're going to consume with the cell-grown. And again, are they bringing it from microplastic bacteria, or how are they growing this thing? It's coming from somewhere as a cultured medium. So what's the medium? They're probably not using agar to start growing some protein source like this. A lot of these protein sources, believe it or not, are coming from plastic-based, microbiome and bacteria that are on plastic, which is also interesting. We have no questions at this time about Wild Type's conclusions that foods comprising or containing cultured coho salmon cell material resulting from their production process defined in the submission. Okay, what's their production process? I would love to see that also. Verboten, that is a trade secret, are as safe as and comparable for foods produced by other methods. Furthermore, at this time, we have not identified any information indicating that the production process, as described in the submission, would expected to be resulting in food that bears or contains any substance or microorganism that would adulterate the food. And my question would be FDA. Are you involved in this? Do you have any shares in the company? Do you sit on the board? Are you receiving compensation? Are you going to be appointed as an advisor or some sort of secretariat for this company as it gets these billions in funding to run forward? Medical industry is notorious for this. They come out of one agency and they're suddenly a CEO or sitting on some other kind of, board of directors for these same drug companies. This interoperability of switching seats from FDA to director, FDA over to CEO. This has got to stop, this chain of movement between agencies. Because who's going to approve something like this? Once here, how it's made. Oh, let's see how it's made. I already read through this. So I was just like, what? Wild Type begins the creation of what are called the cleanest, most sustainable seafood on the planet. Again, this is bogus marketing. The cleanest, most sustainable seafood on the planet. That they've already told us that sustainable is within catch quotas or within a certain amount of harvesting of acres or a certain amount of tree density of thinning that forest. Sustainable foods does not in any way, shape, or form ever in the history of us hearing in this green movement over the last 50 years, talking about cultured lab-grown stuff, meats, fish, insects, whatever it is going to be. Sustainable, again, they're using that lexicon that's been defined, that it means taking only a portion of and allowing that population to reproduce at a sustainable rate without over-harvesting a fishery, over-harvesting a forest. It has nothing to do with cultured lab-grown XYZ fill in the blank. This is deceptive marketing at its best right here. I hope you're taking notes on this. And then, by the way, in the fine print, by extracting cells from a single coho salmon, and they can come from muscle tissue or a fertilized egg, and then they belong to a certain lineage. Again, this is all patented, by the way. And then they're going to turn it into connective tissue. Once collected, the cells are placed in a sterile, nutrient-rich environment designed to mimic the conditions inside a living fish. Okay, well, that nutrient-rich environment, I'm curious what the substrate is. Is your substrate involve plastic, oils, or petrochemicals at all? That is a question that we should know as a consumer. What is your substrate? That is the most basic thing. You're going to grow it. What's it being grown on? Is it being grown on paper? Is it being grown on acrylic? Are you growing it on wood? What is your substrate? This is like the most basic information that should be told to us about these lab-grown frankenfoods that they're trying to push and shove down our throats here. Yeah, once collected, it's in a sterile, nutrient-rich environment designed to mimic the conditions of a fish inside a fish. They multiply in stainless steel tanks, similar to fermenters used in brewing. Over time, the cell mass expands to form what will be the basis of the finished product. Okay, combined with a small number of plant-based ingredients. Are they GMO? Are they not GMO? What plant ingredients are there? I mean, if you're going to go industry like, trade secret stuff, okay, soybean, just tell us what it is, soybean. And then our minds can go, is it GM soy? What kind of soy? What, you can get different kind of seeds for soy. Is it red soy, yellow soy, green soy, black soy? I mean, what kind of soy? There's a lot of different kind of soybeans around the world, believe it or not. Help fine tune the taste and color, giving it a sushi grade look. Okay. For the gelatinous base to give it that feel. I mean, what are you using for that? Like the plant, they're saying right here, plant-based scaffolding. So they're giving it a lattice to grow on and attach to. I want to know what that lattice is made of.
Synthetic DNA.
Is it yeah, right. Is it plastic? Is it synthetic DNA? I'll stop rambling there. But again, there's so many things that we should know about in this, but they're not letting us know. And I want to know why. It's just the most basic.
Think about this. If they're growing, big batches in glass, now they're telling us that all the glass made now, it leaches more plastic than the plastic does.
I know, isn't it? It's crazy. It's hard to even fathom that when you're talking about something that's silica based that comes and there's plastic in it,
Right. It's one of those things like I went out of my way for probably the last 20 years to drink in glass and have glass containers and all that. And now they're telling me, oh, well, we mixed a lot of plastics in there. It's been leaching plastic this whole time. You're not going to get away from it. But the whole spectrum of this is one into the other. Here, let me put you this
Wait, do you think
futuristic
they're using
sci-fi
synthetic
scenario.
DNA? Do you think they're using that, synthetic DNA as the lattice that they're talking about on that?
Well, I think it's possible. I mean, I didn't even read that article, and then you're reading that, and I'm thinking of the other article where they're talking about building DNA from scratch. So that means, and they were talking specifically about humans, but of course, if you could do it for humans, you could do it for any animal. So
Any.
you would just set up the lattice according to the synthetic DNA of that copy of that animal, and just grow the other stuff in there. But think about this: it's almost as if something big is going to happen, and they need people to accept the idea that there might not be food for a long period of time, but it's okay because your governments have a substitute. We can grow fish, we can grow chicken, we can grow beef in these big trays, and you can eat it. It's just like, like, I don't know, you can name a dozen sci-fi movies, protein bars, Soylent Green, etc. It's kind of the thing that they've been telling us about since the 20s, that in the future you're just going to eat some kind of mushy bar of something, and it's completely disgusting. But think about it: if you're starving, your family's starving, and they say, hey, don't worry about it, we got food over at the alligator Alcatraz, you can come over to the alligator Alcatraz and eat you some synthetic alligator. People with starving children are going to go do that. That's what they're going to do if they don't have their own way to, find some kind of sustenance. But just think about that. Any large scale war, famine, pandemic, natural disaster, asteroid, volcano, tsunami, if it's big enough, they'll sell you on the idea it's okay because we have the technology. We don't even need the original food anymore. We could just grow it in vats and feed that pink slime to you in the masses. They can fry it like chicken. They can bread it like whatever, fried fish. Would you even know that you were eating it unless you knew
Yes.
about it?
Yes, you would. The texture would be different. And the onset of an ice age
But if you were a
would be
kid,
that
though,
same terrifying event.
if you were a kid that's not used to
No,
eating
you would never
T-bone
know as a kid.
steaks,
That's all you would know. If you were an adult, you could taste the difference in the texture and maybe the flavor.
right? Absolutely. So it is kind of a bizarre way, and they're doing really sophisticated manipulation of human events, in my opinion. And I wanted to show you this.
Yeah, could I
This, yeah,
tag
go
on
ahead.
with that for a second? So if you brought somebody from, say, the 1920s or 1930s and had them taste chicken McNuggets, that's kind of the same thing as having our young kids starting to dive into this lab grown whatever.
What is it? I love it.
I
No.
love it. It tastes so good. Can I have another one?
MSG.
Makes me want to eat 5, 10, 20, 50 of them. I just can't stop eating these things. They're so good.
Well, you could see how we could eventually look like Wally or a gray alien with these new diets. I'm just saying it could go either way. But like in the meantime, and I'm bad about pushing all these ideas at once because I just see it all accumulating into a unified vision of transhumanism. And I'm listening to these people like Peter Thiel and Bill Gates, Elon Musk, all of them. They're all talking about the same singularity. The only thing they don't talk about is the need to remove most of the population for this idea to work. So you're not going to have robot delivery, delivery robots rolling down the street with your sandwich in your high rise if there's 30 or 40 poor people down there kicking it and breaking into it, or harassing it just because it's fun to harass the little robot, because that's happening now. That's already happening. That's a
Yeah.
reality of now.
And we're not even
Now,
close to starvation. Once starvation comes in, or like real like rationing of food, those things are toast.
right,
No pun intended, but they
but
will be
think
toast.
about places like China and Japan. Nobody's doing that to the robot there. You know
Oh, they'll
why?
be arrested in a second.
Because they have a total grip, a surveillance grip, a technological grip, and a policing grip on the entire society. Not only that, they have been incrementalized over years to act a certain way, based on some of their older traditions. You can't say the same for the West. Everybody's losing whatever culture or tradition they had. It's gone. It's been replaced. But then then we get into these ideas. Like, this is where I was going to go with this. Um, we don't know what event they're going to do, but we know they like to throw shenanigans. And I predicted, but 2 weeks last time before the No Kings garbage that was happening then, this is all pushes from either end to push these socialist communist changes, because mark my words, you can't have the robotic utopia of transhumanism unless you have a lockdown in a similar fashion to the way that they do in communist China, or even in Japan. In Japan, it's not a question of like a lockdown of totalitarianism. They used a different system of ancient behavior to continue that behavior on, and it seems to be working. So those are kind of two contrast ideas where the same thing is happening. So one went down the capitalist route and kind of more of a free and open society, yet they kept their traditions and behavior. The other one kept their traditions and behavior, but they went down a totalitarian police state. But yet they're in a real similar place in 2025 as far as the way that civilization is unfolding. And here you got this, we got round 2 of the protesters supposedly on July 4th, at the same time as the bioterrorism attacks were fictionally, written about in the near future so that we could be prepared, because that was an official thing, giving people the idea that it might happen right around then. And then we could go down.
Wait a second, Ransom. If they're going to have that big earthquake over and an entire continent's going to rise out of the ocean, connecting all the way from the Philippines to Taiwan to Japan, that would stop all stock markets on the planet. Like there would be a complete contagion of every single stock market. Like you're talking some of the largest economies in the world just being ground to a halt completely. So layer that on top too. In addition to the whatever their craft that's coming through the. Oh, and we got the 2 naked eye supernovas that just occurred. They're trying to layer all this like end of the world kind of stuff in a sandwich for you.
Well, also, you can be for or against what they're doing immigration wise. However, you can't argue that they are being able to practice certain scenarios of detaining and gathering people. You can agree, and this is where it goes right here. This is kind of the peak of the point here. Immigration raids leave crops unharvested, California farms at risk, and they're pushing a bunch of those. However, at the same time, jobs are going up, and this is a unique article right here, and this is something that I predicted that we would have to do, and it seems like it's beginning to happen, is domestic labor renaissance. Native-born workers surge at record high as foreign-born plunge. And the reason for that is because there's a demographic change going on, and people are realizing that they're cutting off the free stuff. And that means more and more people are going to be forced to find a little bit of jobs that are out there. And unfortunately, these low skill jobs in the food industry is where it's at. So I'm not too scared that we're not going to there might be a hiccup in the food as far as this goes, but overall there'll be workers to do it. So I don't think that this, manufactured crisis is going to do anything.
I've seen so many incredible videos of farming being done by AI now.
Right.
That whole thing of the farm workers are going to. Are you kidding me? They got autonomy. I'm really into the autonomy of the ag biz and how this is moving forward to replace. We are at the point now where they don't need a human in the field any longer.
No. You just need resources.
Put that in perspective. As of today, 2025, we no longer need a human in the field. Where they need the humans are to refill the petrol tanks for the trucks, the tractors, and anything that might be for maintenance, because currently there's no bipedal robots that come in and change a tire off of something. I'm sure they will have developed or are in the process to develop a specific robot just to change tires on farm equipment. We got to read like farm equipment is not like changing the tire on your car. Or pulling the tire off of a rim and then putting it back on. These robots are saying this is nothing. I mean, what they have in the farm fields already. I mean, they're going through 4 million plants and cataloging them and zapping them with lasers and either targeting fertilizer onto them and this is what the whole thing is. I saw this video coming out. I watched the article and I read above about it. They're at the precision farming now with AI that they can go into a field with 4 million plants, catalog the entire field, know which weed species target those weeds with lasers to burn them, to get them out. They can earmark every single plant and put it into the very good, the good, excellent, or very poor quality, like they do for crop tours, for 4 million plants in a single field. So march that forward with your social credit score. Now, there's going to be very good food or excellent food grown in the field. That'll be earmarked for those with really good credit scores. The poor, I mean, barely harvestable, that will be for you. That if you criticize or interfere with government policy or post something that runs awry of the current narrative. This is where we're going already today. This is how the fields are being, and the people that are required for the human labor are the ones that are filling the pesticides, recharging the batteries off the machines, again, putting fuel in it, making sure that the tires are pressurized. Those are all human activities. After that leaves the garage area, there's no humans any longer. It's purely AI out in the fields, tilling, planting, weed maintenance, fertilizer maintenance, and everything in between that entire process. There's not a single human involved anymore. So when you say, oh, they're going to come and they're not going to go to work, okay, big deal. These companies that can come up with billions of dollars on their stock valuations, they're going to roll hundreds of millions into these robotic systems. So as far as I'm looking, humans are no longer needed in agriculture. So they could go down to 100% zero, nobody else in the field, because right now that's what it's at. 100% zero people in the field. You don't need them anymore. You need, like I say, the native born workers that will take those jobs to refuel the machines, restock the fertilizer in it, replenish the herbicides in there, and that's all you need. But as soon as bipedal robots can take over those functions, even those people will not be needed any longer at the quote unquote like service hub bay or the service bays. So that's what they call them when the machinery comes back in from the field. So, I mean, we're at the point right now of complete phase out of human needs for any type of labor. So it brings me where we're going to go to the Bitcoin citadels that I've read about from the time traveler.
Yeah, the smart cities.
Back from the break.
Now, I don't even think they have to be bipedal, David. It's just like the Industrial Revolution. There's some guy somewhere coming up with the niche to fix that little problem that happens, just like they did in all manufacturing. So there's going to be a guy sitting there decide, well, how do we get that in there? And they already have all of these different tank things.
The robotic XYZ axis arms and stuff.
Yeah. They don't even have to be humanoid. That's the point. And I think they're showing those little goofy, boxing robots and soccer robots. That's all to keep you off guard, so that whenever you're completely immersed in the robotics, you won't even know what happened. It'll just be overnight.
And here we go. Thanks for staying with us for the first hour. Please remember, buy me a coffee /civilization cycle if you like the content, so we can continue to bring you this information right here. Keep us on air along with the podcast. And we're going to take a short break, and please join us for hour number 2. I'm going to run through a few food slides and extreme weather, I should say, damaging jet streams out of their flows because of weakening magnetic field on our planet. See you in a couple minutes.
How do you feed your families when the shelves are empty, the stores are shut, and there's no food available? What is the fastest, easiest, and most productive foods to grow? What is the quickest way to get somebody who has no skills at all up and running and producing very quickly? If you understand that we're at a point in history where it is no longer optional to be growing your own food, if you're like really freaked out and concerned because you've never grown food before and you don't have any skills, you don't know how to do that, but you know how important it is, then I want to let you know, however you stumbled here, you're in the right place. My name is Marjorie Wildcraft. I'm the founder of the Grow Network, and I have been the female leader in the survival and preparedness space for the last 20 years.
How to grow lots of food, even if you have no experience, are older and out of shape. This is for people who want the fastest and easiest ways to produce healthy and delicious meat, eggs, and vegetables. Because you know that growing your own food is like printing your own money. During this webinar, you will get status of global food shortages, how long the crisis will last, how much space you need to grow food, easiest, highest calorie foods you can produce, a complete plan for producing all the food you need, how to get started today, regardless of season. Marjorie will show you the fastest, easiest, and simplest ways to produce calories and nutrition, especially in a crisis and/or grid-down situation. The assumption is that you have no experience and you need to start producing food immediately. The most popular part of the webinar is the Q&A session at the end. So please come prepared with your questions.
Don't forget to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Civilization Cycle. And thank you for all the support.
This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts. Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world. And welcome back for the second hour right here. Civilization Cycle. Wanted to start you off with a, let's see, what do I want to get here? I want to, hold on, excuse the travesty here while I move over. I wanted to find, oh, this screen right here we go. Hailstorm forces airline to inspect 100 planes at major hub. So I'm looking through this here going, all right, this is on June 28th. It's just a few days back. Severe thunderstorm hits the world's busiest passenger airport. So this is Atlanta, Georgia, and that's about 4 hours south of where I live here. But the damage that's done, you got to think about this. World's busiest airport, and definitely for the United States, but hundreds and hundreds of aircraft need to be inspected after this event. This is what was talked about with the ramp up in this grand solar minimum and the depleting magnetic field, and how it's just more about the jet streams and cloud flows go out of their normal patterns. And with this depleting magnetic field, there seems to be some correlation of the build and the updrafts and thunderstorms that are not limited like the previous tightened magnetic field. It used to stop at a certain height, and it generally didn't grow further or in altitude. If you're looking at the cumulonimbus clouds, they would be capped off at like 30,000 feet or something. But now we're getting some of these storms that are going up 45, 50,000 feet. And that is just beyond absurd in the types of updraft. But the hail size, and they talked about this in the spore minimum as well, if you go back into the 1300s, that the hail size was just so gargantuan that when the hail came, it would crush wooden homes into the mud, where when you surveyed after some of these storms that came through with such ferocity that there was not a visible village left, that the wooden homes had been pulverized and smashed into the mud to the point that there was not a standing village any longer there. But what was the mechanism of this? And if we go back to, biblical accounts or prehistoric accounts, or if you talk about the Chinese with their records, and especially the Arab traders, what they'd seen, moving across vast distances of Africa, the Middle East, India, and all the way into China and what we consider Asia, they talked about the same ferocious types of storms on different occasions as well. So there's some mechanism definitely behind this in terms of gigantic hail that's coming through. And I don't know what to tell you, Ransom, but we are definitely on the cusp here of having another gigantic, disruptive weather pattern. When you're talking about taking about hundreds of airplanes that need to be inspected, the size of the hail needs to be grapefruit-sized hail. And as the biblical stories talk or forecasted, prophecy from others through realms, talk about things getting to the size of bowling balls for the hail. So for me, if I'm looking at a 50,000 foot, cumulonimbus apex anvil head is what they call that when it reaches up to a certain height, when it gets up above, it's sort of toward a mesosphere. They call it an anvil because it gets up and then it spreads and it sort of looks like an anvil as it's bending. Yeah. At what point does it need to exceed up and actually scrape the mesosphere before we get this type of updraft hail that they speak about, where it can come down larger than grapefruit size, literally half of a watermelon or a bowling ball size? Because the way that hail is made is it's caught, the raindrops fall, it recirculates, gets the updraft, pulls it back up, and it gets another layer of ice. So when you look at hail, at least the larger stones, if you cut it across, it very much look like a tree ring. So when you look at this type of incredible ferocity that keeps increasing by the year, at what point does this stop? And when I say that, I'm trying to pull us up. Let me see, what do we got here? Get me out of here. Help. I'm stuck on the button.
This whole year is funny to me because I'm looking
Wait a second. Let me finish this one thought. I mean, is this the real reason that they're trying to get us to stop flying and try to introduce that idea that flights are bad, just no CO2? Or is it that we're coming to this point now where hailstorms are going to start taking down flights so frequently that we just aren't going to be want to fly in the skies? So, take that as the beginning of the second hour of what you will.
What do you think happens if you're flying around when the magnetic field is collapsed down closer to Earth and you're way up there? You're getting fried. It already happens now. Imagine what it would happen if it was considerably less of a magnetic field around Earth. You'd be getting fried a lot in those airplanes. And I don't know. That could be that. And I was going to link to that. So right here, you got the whole map here, and I want to put it on the lightning.
The lightning mapper is a good one. I forget what that is. GOES 18 is a lightning mapper, or is it GOES 16? I can't remember.
This is just the MSNBC or whatever it is, MSN weather. But when you click on the precipitation or lightning, you see this weird thing. Look at across the entire globe. It's centered around the United States right now. All of this electricity right here, and then you see it in the same latitudes all the way across the world.
Yeah, it's the same latitude, isn't it? Yeah, that's got to be the electrified band that's increasing as well.
And it's on the mountain ranges.
Mm.
But here, this is what I was trying to say to you when we were off. You see this?
Right, it is. I was looking at the Alps over there in Europe too.
This green blotch right here. So this is right next to me. So in this valley between Truth or Consequences and Carrizosa, I live right here. So I watch these supercells form right about here. Here's one coming up soon. Matter of fact, a whole line of them. So they're going to come and they're going to get bigger right here. And they stop right here. This is Sierra Blanca next to Three Rivers, where all of the petroglyphs are. And there's a whole lava flow right here. So there's a lot of weird activity as far as geologic, electric, weather. But once this storms usually hit here, they might go up this direction. But almost every time I see them build in my area, somebody in Oklahoma dies of a tornado, or Missouri or Illinois, all the way up into Chicago. We watch these things. And here's another little area where they start right here, and they just roll through Arkansas, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, and stuff like that. So almost every time. And this is what's going on. We're on a different cycle this year. This is our monsoon right here, is what you're looking at. So this monsoon's coming in here, and people are whining over in Europe about triple digits and stuff. Well, last year and the year before that and the year before that, where I live, it was really hot, but right now it is 78 degrees. Nice and cool. Every morning's been cool. We've been getting showers. I think we've been getting up into maybe 90 degrees, which is really low temperatures for our area. Yet on the local news, they're still telling us that we're hitting record highs. We're breaking the record. But that's not true. It's actually really cool here in the Southwest right now, especially at nighttime. It's going to drop down. I think it was like 62 degrees. Oh, that's the wrong one. But anyway, into the 60s. Yeah, there's 68, 69 degrees. Really mild temperatures for the Southwest because we're having monsoon. But yet they're complaining over here, in a place where it's normally this temperature over here, they're crying because it's hot. And you notice this weather up here, barely any lightning. So you can kind of, I don't know, who studies this, but it looks like to me, and this is, I don't know anything. I'm not trying to say I know anything, but it looks like the earth is really electrified around these areas where mountains are next to lowlands. So like right at the border of the mountains and the lowlands, because you'll see the same thing down here. This is Mexico City. This is where the mountainous areas are, the volcanoes and stuff. Down here is where the continental plates are pushing together and you get these massive mountains. But yet right on the other side of it, you see this big water blotch with no lightning in it that's out there in the Amazon basin. So all this water goes up, it hits this, it gets electrified. And I don't know if this is what's happening, but it sure does seem like this little cone right here pulls these hurricanes right over here.
Well,
Like an electric charge.
That same phenomenon is happening right there with Pakistan heading up into the Himalaya. So when you look at that, I've covered a fair few bunch of stories right when, you're going to go a little more west past New Delhi up there. Yeah. But we had that whole range of the Himalaya there. There seems to be that band coming off Pakistan as well, and Afghanistan too, where those storms are starting to come on a different flow and they're hitting right in there, and then boom, they just stop off.
Yeah,
let me share this quick screen with you. Rare Atlantic La Nina has emerged, and this is coming up on the 19th of June. So what they're showing is this. Hold on, excuse me. Let me pull this here. So this is a rare thing. You just try to direct me and point me over to that same direction. So I'm just following on your thought. When you had the lightning there, notice that this very rare La Nina formation, usually it's in the western or in the eastern Pacific, could go to the western Pacific, depends on how far it gets out toward Indonesia. But notice the plumes and the waves coming off. It's both in the Pacific and in the Atlantic. But notice that cool that is not normally there, that's off of West Africa.
Right.
This is dampening any type of hurricane formation at the moment. So the gray that you're seeing right here on my mouse, that's South America. And then over here, and we come on to Western Africa. So the temperature variance here and the pressure differential is something that is incredibly rare to see, and it's dampening any type of hurricane formation. And look at this, Atlantic Nino or Nina, depending on the Nino, the heat, and the Nina is the cooling effect. But as we look, and these are time immemorial traders that are on commodities push these things, but they're confused right now because this is such a rare event. And here's what the latest on at least the 16th of June on what NOAA was looking at, and this has intensified since. But you can see those black boxes right there. That colder than normal water coming off of West Africa is something that is only been seen 3 times in the last 120 years. So when you look at something like this, if you're going to say that, okay, it's a 40-year pattern, or is it something different that is starting to amplify, and this is orders of magnitude above what would be already on that 40-year pattern? Because look at off of Baja and Mexico over there, heading up into California, how cool the water temperatures are. You're talking 1 to 2 degrees Celsius, which is, a good 3. I'm going to just say 3 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a huge, huge difference for water temperature. Air temperature, maybe not so much, but for water, that's very significant. And then you can see how this year, there hasn't been any hurricane, no formation yet. And then you look at the black box here, and you can see why. Because this is generally where it starts to get its heat formation and, build from there. The energy comes off of it. So where's your lightning sit inside this now? or doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was showing there. That's usually where you see it suck like with a negative. I don't know if it's positive or negative or what it is. But it would be curious to go look at whenever those hurricanes are forming coming in there, if there wouldn't be less lightning over here in the Americas where you see just like a ton of it right now. It's just, wow. Another thing, think about this. We're finally getting to see in a domino effect what Tunga actually did to the atmosphere. So people expected this, immediate dramatic change, but actually that water was up there and then it started circulating. So you got all these cycles that got disrupted by having a bunch more water in it. So it takes time for you to see the end result of that. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it. All I know is I'm enjoying a nice, cool summer here in the Southwest that, usually they were telling us we were dying on a burning earth here, and they're still trying to push it, even though the temperatures are quite mild. And
Yeah, can
think
I throw
about that,
another
from
one at you?
60 to 90.
There's been a stratospheric warming event in Antarctica this time. So stratospheric warming events generally are where there's a high pressure system that takes over and usually knocks something out of the way, and that's why they call it stratospheric warming, because it's higher altitude and then it moves, that displaces the cooler air. So what you're looking at here is this displacement in real time. So that Antarctic polar air is going to get knocked out somewhere and move. And you can see the displacement happening right here. Usually that cold will center right over Antarctica during the season. But as we have with sudden stratospheric warming events here in the Northern Hemisphere as well, once that gets knocked off, this is why we'd have those incredible record cold events that had permeated all the way down. That's why we had all that snow this year down in the panhandle of Florida. We got a stratospheric warming event. That same high pressure knocked all the cold out of its regular centered position and sent it south. And that at this time it happened to come over the United States. Other times it happens over Asia. And, it just depends where it is. It'll spin. Perhaps that'll come all the way down to North Africa. But this warming event is also something of the extreme. Like if you're looking at the amount of displacement in terms of temperature and, full surface area that was displaced in terms of millions of square miles, this is something on the record level as well. So anywhere from 20 miles up further at 50 millibars up. But you can see how this thing is taking shape and form, and this cold air has not displaced completely yet, and they're unsure exactly how deeply it's going to go up into South America. But if I digress here and I show you this article, and I'm going to share this tab here coming off of right here. This is where it's being displaced to. Argentina closes the border crossing as record-breaking polar wave sweeps across Chile. And that's exactly what was happening. This thing is displacing all that cold air straight over. It's actually moved up into southern South America. So this displacement, it will be exactly the same as we had with our incredible record cold temperatures and snowfalls and all these things that we saw across southern Mississippi, Alabama, Florida with this record snow this year, is exactly the same thing they're experiencing right now. We're about to get incredibly pounded with, where, put this in perspective, we have nations closing their borders because it's too cold to travel. In my wildest dreams on the global warming broiling planet, and we got this border crossings closed because of too cold. This is something so outside the normal. This is like and if you're talking like 6 sigma deviation, there's probably like a 10 sigma event here. Polar wave, so cold that Chile and Argentina close everything because it's so dangerous for anybody to be outside at the moment. So you got to realize the Antarctic cold gets a little bit colder by about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, cooler than the Arctic temperatures do. And that much displacement of that much cold, nearly at the record displacement that's ever been measured, forced onto this area, we're reaching so many different records. And, just wind it right back to the Atlantic La Nina. And then we have this the Antarctic displacement, southern polar region displacement. I mean, we really just jumped the shark on this thing. I don't know what to tell you. but something in the mechanics of it all has shifted. And, where does that leave us politically then, or food price wise? Like, who knows this cycle is here? And then why are all these stipulations being put upon mankind of how you can behave or not, what you can consume, where you can travel, why you can do this, you can fly here, you can do that. Oh, wait, you can't say that. You got to be over here. You got to, all this happening in unison at the same time is a little bit difficult. Like I say, for me to believe that they're not interrelated somehow.
Maybe it's got something to do with that. You know that guy that just flew there without permission. They swooped in and arrested him right away.
No, I didn't.
No, some guy flew his plane. He decided when he left Argentina to not follow his flight plan. He flew over to Antarctica and landed. They came and arrested him, and it's just funny, because that's nobody's nation, but yet the security there is real deal. A question
That
I
is,
have.
isn't it? That's so strange. It is a real deal with security there. You can't, man, you can't even go anywhere on that continent.
I was
only
wondering,
ice, though. What can you damage is just ice.
you might see something, maybe. That's what the conspiracy theorists say. I was wondering when you were showing all those maps and we were looking at that little kind of cold spot off of the Horn of Africa there, or not the Horn of Africa, off the Ivory Coast right there. What happens if that moves north at the same time one of those cold blotches moves south in the Atlantic? Is that something to do with the AMOC? I mean, because they keep bringing up that article over and over again. If circumstances are just right from the ice melt, blah, 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 it'll pour in there. It'll get cold real fast. The salinated water will be different.
Decades in the making of, even if you were to see some sort of substantial change in, ocean temperatures from that freshwater pulse, flowing into there, you're talking at least a decade. It's not going to be an instantaneous thing. So those movies where it's like an overnight change.
No. Yeah. No, I just
really,
meant
it's not like that.
thing.
I mean, you got to realize you're trying to change ocean salinity by melting ice that freezes and melts every single year on a pattern anyway. So to try to go over that enough to make a substantial change on the amount of, melt water coming in fresh, for example. I mean, the scales of it is just so mind-bogglingly gigantic that to have an effect, by the time you poured all that in there with the mixing, by the time it circulated around and, you finally got to that dispersion rate where it might have some sort of effect in the upwelling or downwelling. I mean, you're talking at least a decade before, there's no instantaneous movement in an ocean like that.
So maybe like
surface waters. Yeah. But we're talking going down thousands and thousands of feet of circulation.
Well, here's the theory. I just kind of sent it over to you to read it. So basically,
the AMOC.
They're saying the whole thing would be 1,000-year cycle, yet that cycle would probably be ending about 2030.
It tends where's the okay. So if you look at some of these meltwater pulses is what they call them. Meltwater pulse A and B, and who is the guy with the beard? Randall Carlson. Always talks about meltwater pulse A and meltwater pulse B. Well, that was from the comet hitting the ice sheet, and there was instant melting of a glacier, and all that water subsequently flowed in at one time. But that is something that we have not experienced. If there is a meteor or some sort of comet fragment that comes in and hits on an ice sheet somewhere, there's no ice sheets on the planet today. So to try to even get that level of water to flow in a single event is nigh impossible in our world. There's just not that much available ice to melt off of landmass, regardless of the cause. We can't get that type of instantaneous flow in.
Right. It's the same
We're
reason.
Talking 2 mile deep ice across Canada when that fragment hit and it melted a huge portion of that. Or not even a huge portion, but let's just say a 16th of it melted and all came in one day or 1 week. We're nowhere close to that. We're like drip. It was like putting an eyedropper in the ocean, compared to pouring a glass of water in it. He does look like a real life Santa. I agree. So does Ted Marchildon at Omega Garden. AMOC is a slow moving current. Yep.
But the thing
that's
is,
your note. You're so smart, man.
I did. No, I'm just putting that up there to joke around. I've read papers that say, though, that the end of the cycle could happen within decades. It's not about how much water flowed in it. It's about the particular temperature change that's caused by the amount of runoff from a summer, from just one summer, depending on other factors, obviously. But those are all theories. But the crazy part is that they really don't know. This is like, the more and more I read about science and theories, and I meant to turn that off. The theories that they have is that they really just don't know.
Yeah, they don't. Nobody really knows because we've never lived through one of those events. And until we do, would it be the true history that we are being given or allowed to know about?
And then,
That's the whole thing. There are some peer-reviewed documents that I've seen, and they say the onset of an ice age can occur and has occurred. So they were reviewing the last 200 ice ages on planet, going back millions of years. The fastest onset was 10 years, according to this research that was given. 10 years. So put that in perspective. Are we getting close to that? Because as we look at, if you look at the, here's the whole thing about climate debate that I really didn't like. So the GISP, which is the Greenland Ice Survey Project, the GISP to ice core data set, before all this global warming hype really got kicked in and it became political, the GISP2 was the gold, stamp. That was the gold standard for all temperature measurements, historically going back for the last 10,000 years. But what it showed was, 10,000 years prior and 8,000 years and 6,000 and 4,000 years prior, it was warmer than today. And then subsequently, we're coming off on a curve coming down, and we are literally at the cusp of the edge of entering into the next ice age. That was very inconvenient to try to push a full narrative of we're coming into a broiling planet. When if you look subsequently, it's 2 degrees cooler than it was 8,000 years ago. So stepping off into something that could occur in a quicker fashion, like where we sit, on the latitudes banded of our industries, habitation zones, otherwise known as cities, villages, towns, infrastructure, whether it be pipelines or railways or ports, that whole gamut is going to shrink. If it comes down to it, what you're talking about, there's a rapid onset because of some sort of ice melt event, or we're truly stepping off into another constrictive, I should say, environment of where humans can live and operate, then that changes everything, including the full valuation of the stock market. You can't value companies if they can't operate in the same areas anymore, which kind of winds back into, there's something, Andy Schechtman and myself had talked about this, the Arctic century. So China and Russia have been developing this extreme cold weather technologies, not only for their sea routes where they're going to be running ships outside control of the US Navy, but the technology involved for even something as simple as a tire to run in the middle of winter in the high Arctic requires engineering feats that are so far secret, as we shall say. But China and Russia are the forefront and light years ahead of where we sit in terms of technologies for running in the Arctic, and not just moving from point A to point B to do a research project. They're talking about setting up entire cities up there for this trans-Arctic route for all the commodities between the nations to run. They're setting up ports as we would, string of pearls, but it's in, hold on, what are you doing over here? Puppy cameo. The string of pearls that we understand coming across through India up into the Middle East and back into China, there's the same thing that's occurring in the Arctic. They're setting up this route of ports around the entire Arctic Circle with nuclear icebreakers that run 24/7, 365. Middle of winter in the Arctic, they have developed technologies that will allow them to bypass everything that we understand as a bottleneck and constraint right now. The nuclear icebreaker fleet, the full winterized Arctic battle APC carriers, everything in between for habitation, pipelines, everything has been just developed to operate in the Arctic. So I was wondering also, is that really the full story we're being given? Or is this the technology that we need as we enter a colder planet for all countries to survive? Because you cannot tell me that our economies have all shifted right now because of the passage of this bill, that we're now moving into a stablecoin standard, full-on crypto world that's going to overtake, supplant, and run parallel to the US dollar as a crutch to it versus total collapse. For what reason? They just need to kick the can down the road a little bit longer. But this movement between cryptocurrency world and US dollar-based world, we're getting into this etheric kind of blending of the two where they're going to crutch together for a minute until they don't. And all this going along when they're setting up all the Arctic routes and Arctic technology for a colder planet. And I'm just thinking, a lot of these excuses they're giving us don't seem to hold water any longer. I think they're covering under the excuse of an enemy or a different, there's so many excuses given out there, but why would they go to all this effort just to send goods back and forth across the Arctic? They're spending hundreds of billions in technology, innovation, and investment, if not trillions, just to run hundreds of billions of assets across the ocean up there. The ROI makes 0 cents, unless it's going to be a global thing. Then it would make sense.
Well, I was thinking about this for a while. If it were to happen that things got considerably colder, which made things harder to live, then we go back to that idea of AI and robotics. Where does that kind of fit in? And I was going to show you this, this is my train of thinking here.
Yeah, but Arctic hardened everything on the robotics side too.
Right. Well, the idea would be all of these robots, but we all know that they kind of are crappy in the cold, and that's kind of their weak point. Robotics don't do well in the cold. The rubbers get stiff, the lubricants get hard, the batteries drain. But if you were to put yourself in an underground city that could occupy, I don't know, tens of thousands of people in it, and you needed to feed those
millions.
people, or millions, whatever. These are just ones of the ancient world. We know that they've built modern continuity of government, things like this. So if they knew that was going to happen, I would think that what they would do is invest in a future that most people don't think is going to happen. So that might include a bunch of worker robots, humanoid and otherwise. You might need, I don't know, a bunch of different farm bots like we were talking about before, the rise of the farming bots, all kinds of them. This is a great article. Each link leads to another robot that's just fascinating and very efficient and runs great. The problem would be that both the crops and the robots wouldn't work in a cold world, right? But they might work underground. The only problem is how would you power a city of robots and people? I don't know. It's like, have they come up with these ideas already? Have they already put them into fruition or made the devices? So I don't know. You might need an artificial sun to not only power things, but also grow your crops underground. And it's not like, and the reason I put this up here is because the latest thinking is that some of these people were in here for decades living down in these things. These are modern underground cities that are public. This has nothing to do with continuity of government. Some of them, they list the ancient ones, but some of them are modern that they've built now, like this one right here. Central Government War Headquarters, aka Burlington. And then you have places like Cheyenne Mountain. You got rumors of Dulce. I've seen maps that show the entire state of New Mexico with underground railways, high-speed railways, which is funny because, a lot of people are asking why the United States, being kind of the origin of the train system and, all of that, why is it that we're having a problem making these high-speed rails to interconnect the United States? It's almost as if they know that would be useless in the near future because people won't be traveling or whatever. My mind can wander on all kinds of reasons why they do or don't do things, but you have in Europe and Asia some pretty nice high-speed trains. We may actually have those same trains. They're just underground. And it's not as far-fetched as you think. Most of the stockpile of goods and products are actually held in limestone caverns that are man-made throughout central United States. You can watch, I don't know how many shows now that kind of basically show the outside of it, the commercial side of it. But even the commercial side of it is a massive cities. And that's just the ones that they've showed us where trucks can enter the holes, and go to their designated corporation that they pick up their whatever, or they drop it off. So these things actually exist already. And you wouldn't think that, back to the concentration camp thing, when you start putting all these puzzles in a fictional future, you tend to realize that future isn't so fictional. So if something happens, the infrastructure for that event has already been created. So we have underground cities, we have underground transportation, we have robots, we have artificial means of providing light and power to all of the devices. So the idea that there may have been or there could be a breakaway civilization is kind of asinine at this point, when we know that there are breakaway civilizations. There's black budget projects, and we're all talking about the debt. Why don't you try to track down where those billions of dollars actually go, and you'll find out that it's untrackable. Most of it's untrackable. It's going into black projects. And then we're talking about the big, beautiful bill. That's just stuff you're allowed to know about. That's only things that you're allowed to argue about, read about, and that's the public stuff. They don't show you where all the missing money goes. Where does all that interest gained and disappeared go to the federal banks and things like that just disappear? It disappears. And we've talked about it with the crypto. We talked about it with the gold. And remember when Trump was going to go over there and it was a big deal and we were joking about it, that it would never happen? Well, it never happened. He never went to Fort Knox and inspected the gold. Matter of fact, they just dropped that story out of the headlines because that's a no-no. But what we did see in the headlines is a lot of international transfers of gold where they moved it to new locations. So it's all in new places with new owners, and they're still trying to get the bottom of the bucket. And I've showed you many of those articles about pawn shops, jewelries, those companies that, you send it in and then they recycle it. So they are gathering all of the resources. So if you were a detective and you were looking at it from, a point of view of like a think tank, how they think, they said there's going to be AI Air Force by 2025. We see exactly that. The nations of the world, robot wars happening right on cue. The next phase, the only phase that I see coming, no matter what the trigger is, whether it's, I don't know. You can just pick. Like I said, there's so many of them to reach in the hat and pull out. You have natural disasters, man-made disasters, war, different reasons for famine kind of, works in there. And then you also have this idea of bioterrorism or just natural pandemics, natural ones that go out. So any number of these triggers, and you realize that they could totally reset right now, and it's all set up. They have the technology. It's here. It's not something that we're conspiracy theorying about or theorizing about. It is here. They do have the technology. It's ahead of what you think it is, because just with what I can find on open public, articles and whatnot, I can see that if you intertangle them or, merge them all, they have what it takes to reset the entire global civilization at this point.
Shall we talk about global reset civilization? Now, this is a city in Czech Republic, which I visited, called Neumo, but I didn't know there was an underground city there that can hold up to 40,000 people. And not only this, the part you're seeing right here, if I may, let me see. This town is connected across a valley, which you can see here. And if you follow my mouse, it goes all the way down and all the way back up over to the other side. And on the other side is the connector to the underground city. So they built it to go beneath this castle, all the way under this river and all the way up on the other side. So both sides of this valley are connected together through the same city. And the entire hillside here was sculpted out from beneath. And apparently, what they keep telling you, the story is that there are marauders coming through, and you can see some of these same things. Sort of looks like any of the gourmets or any of the, they've rebuilt quite a bit of it, so you can go in as a tourist attraction. They could take you through, kind of. But it was vast. And there's springs under there, and there's rebuilt sections more like concretey. They really wanted to get the catacomb looked for you and all it. But this is what the city looks like. And then everywhere you walk around, it has the same kind of real old, like 1500s vibe to it. The cathedral there still has the domes and the electric collection devices. There it is. Right here, all the electric collection devices from Tesla Technologies right here on top of that. And here as well with the domes in the cathedral. But that was it. The whole thing was set like this. And another whole underground city nobody's ever heard of. When people are talking about Gourmet and Cappadocia and Darren Yanku and all these different underground cities, yeah, famous ones, but I did not know there are another dozen underground cities all across the Czech Republic. They're also in Poland, underground cities. Huge amount of underground cities everywhere on this planet. So if our infrastructure, now think about this as a government and cost savings, you're trying to do analysis. All right, we're coming into termination ice age entry event / extreme cooling that will just knock the legs out of global food production. Would you even care about the stuff on the top of the planet if you had all this subsurface technology ready to go for the new world? Why are they not repairing our bridges? Why are our roads never repaired? Ports, locks, especially the locks from like the upper, when you're coming to upper Great Lakes, coming down through St. Lawrence Seaway. And then once you come into the Mississippi, like that whole chain of locks is, even the Department of Transportation is talking about how damaged it is and how close to catastrophic failure it is. Yet we put no money into repairing that. Why not? It's super important for grain deliveries and movements across the Mississippi, like down to loading ports down in Louisiana. Why aren't they repairing that? What is this thing where there's no repairs going on to our major, most important, vital infrastructure? Well, I would do the same thing. If I knew there was going to be some sort of flood, like think about a place where you knew there was going to be a volcanic eruption or some sort of landslides that were coming down, and they were measuring it. Okay, you got about 2 months left. The cracks are showing this. We've seen many a place in the world where that happens. Okay, definitely the land subsidence here. You got about a month left, and the way it's going is going to calve off. Would you remodel your house at that point? Of course you wouldn't. You just be like, we're bailing. Get whatever you can out, extract the value. I'm taking my light fixtures. I'm taking the light sockets. I can get the copper value out of that. I'm taking everything. And I would leave just the facade of it, or just the structure itself. And this is what we're seeing in today's world. So how close are we really? I guess I'll leave that's the question. Like, how close is this event that we need a new entire currency to run across the reserve currency? I don't know. Something is definitely wrong here. I mean, you know where I'm going with the point. Mute.
Yep. I was thinking, what kind of currency would you be using in one of these underground cities? Because, I'm showing this and I'm pointing out
Bitcoin, man, Bitcoin.
These are all the old stuff that we know about, like Beijing underground city. We know there's one in Russia that's giant, that was underneath their train system in Moscow. And these are just the ones that are public. Like there's, where was that one? The Treasury. And then you got the salt mine. These are all famous old ones, like you were saying, like Petra. 22,000 people could have lived in there back in the things. 20,000 people at Darren Q, and that's just what they found. But imagine the things that are modern. Here's Burlington, that supposedly 4,000 government personnels would be able to get in there and live. And this is all old continuity of government shut down. But now Imagine what they have built now. I mean, literally. I was thinking on this topic that I live near Carlsbad Caverns, and when you go there and you visit, it's really cool. You go deep underground, about a mile, wide open, you know, cave system. It's giant in there. But when you get to the end of it, you hop in this like a 1950s Cold War style elevator that takes you up to the top level, the ground level, really fast. And if they have that, imagine what's on the side of the whole backside of that mountain, all the way over through the Rio Grande Valley, up into where, you know, people talk about Dulce and stuff. There's plenty of places to build these, and I would argue that they did, and in fact have built lots of these domes. But I think they're more technologically advanced than we think. And you know, if you can take an elevator in like 30 seconds from a mile down in the earth for just a tourist trap, imagine what they have and the transit systems that they've built, because that was a government built elevator there. I know it's old, but it's just like it's literally the same elevator. If you've ever seen that movie Spies Like Us, where they go out to the gas station and then they get dropped down into the old base underneath, it's just like that. So it's pretty trippy. I would think that if something was going to happen, like I was kind of pointing out, that they already have laid out the plans and the groundwork and the infrastructure for continuity of everything. And I would think that it wouldn't be just nation states. We know billionaires are building stuff like that. But think about what the banking system and the real secret societies, some that we don't even know about, because most of the ones you joke about or hear about, or, you know, you see memes about, that's all stuff that we've known for a long time. And they wouldn't be a real actual secret society if you knew about it. That means that those were failed secret societies, or at least the societies that they wanted you to know about and learn about. So somewhere, and I would say here in the US, England, China, France, probably Russia, you know, on and on, they have underground cities, and they have continuity of government and continuity of corporations already built, supplied, ready for some kind of event, whether it's that, you know, and I was wondering too, like, you imagine if something like this, what was it called? I forgot again, the manga Doomsday prediction, you know, about this giant earthquake in Tokyo. We kind of saw what a 9.0 would do to it. Imagine something even bigger near that area, or even off the west coast of the United States, because it's very possible to happen there. So there's any number of these giant things that would totally reset everything we know about living on planet Earth, but not the governments, not the banks. Just like in ancient times, they'll be there to take control right after whatever happens.
It reminds me of the Bitcoin citadels. Now, if you haven't heard about the Bitcoin citadel, there was supposedly a time traveler that came back from going into the future some 70 years from now, or it was like 2070, somewhere around there. Came back and said, "Oh, I got to find this computer. I had like 1/10 of a Bitcoin in it. I got to find it. I got to find it." This is many years ago, this time traveler story. It's like, this is 1/10 of a Bitcoin, 1/10 of a Bitcoin, not a whole Bitcoin, 1/10 would allow you to get into some sort of citadel where all your life needs were taken care of, and you lived opulently for the rest of your life for just 1/10 of a Bitcoin. Conversely, everybody outside who didn't have Bitcoin was in sort of this dystopian, you know, end of the world movie, whatever one you want to choose. They were kind of in this, no, there was nothing functional. It was like the survival of the fittest, whoever lived in sort of this world. But the way they had portrayed it in my mind, you know, the way it was going, it was an above ground thing in like a castle setting with walls around it. But you just showed me it's not. It's an underground. It's going to be underground. Now, perhaps with this Bitcoin, you'll be like brought into the center of the hollow earth, or you'll be taken to a section of the quote unquote hollow earth to live out, you know, advanced technologies, advanced medicines, and this sort of thing. And if you were smart enough to have the BTC and be able to hold on to it in a cold wallet while whatever it is, but But the Bitcoin Citadel, you just sparked my mind there. It's not an above ground facility. It's a below ground facility. That's the reason I was trying to make the point. You brought that article up, did you not?
Well, it was an article about how somebody changed the original Reddit post of the time travel, but nobody knows who did it. And keep in mind that they kind of have a trick here, because if you went to the internet and you Google Bitcoin Citadel, you might find a couple articles. So if you look up Bitcoin City, you're all going to get that El Salvador thing. But if you look up proposed smart cities, then it all opens up, right? Because those are all the same thing. They're all the Bitcoin citadels. And I was thinking, in some places it might be underground, but other places, maybe Saudi Arabia, it might not be. It might be
that
above
like
ground.
glass thing, yeah.
Right, the giant wall. So there's
You can
all
only
of these.
come in if you have Bitcoin. Is that the whole thing of it? You can only buy your way in with 1/10 of a Bitcoin?
Yes, and it's just like some of and it's funny because that's now the fad in science fiction movies. You have what is it? Fallout Boy or something like that, and then there's a really good one that's called The Silo. If you want to check that out, really good sci-fi. It's about a group of silos. Something happened to the Earth where you're assuming it's like nuclear war or something, but they have 10,000 people per silo. And there's a whole, system of government there that's exactly like the U.S. system of government, where you have a judicial and an executive branch, and then you have a working class, and you have the upper, kind of elites that have the managerial jobs, and then down at the bottom are where the slave labor miners are working. They got in trouble because they violated the system. They shoved them down in there. But the show's called Silo. And when you start watching it for a while, all knowledge has been banned. All books have been taken because originally it was a utopia where everybody got to learn and know everything. But every 20 years, they'll throw a revolution. So somebody had the idea that if they knew about the previous revolutions, they would keep doing them. So they erased everybody's memory using drugs in the water, like fluoride or something. They just pumped a bunch of drugs in there until slowly people forgot. And then smart people keep popping up despite their effort to keep people uneducated about reality. And they would figure out that the stars move, that the earth is round, and they would come up with these ideas that would be deemed dangerous to the state, because every idea that makes you think gives you another idea. And then more and more people think about things, and they don't want you to think. They want you to be a robot. They want you to do your job and take your rations and use your credits. Just like the Bitcoin, use your credits to buy and do anything. And if you have saved up enough, you get to move into better quarters, higher up in the silo. But eventually they realize that it's an analog for the planet Earth. The silo is the planet Earth. And then eventually they find out there's other worlds out there. In other words, other silos with different things happening. And it's really, really bizarre show, but it goes right into this. They have all of these shows that are about this, where people are going to be locked in vaults via corporation or their government or whatever it is, but they're going to have an electronic monetary system and a complete surveillance state once that they're in there. And, they're giving you the Doomsday version where they all fail and you have to get up and deal with the wasteland or monsters or whatever it is. That part's all the fictional part. The reality is the silo itself, the idea of the arrangement of the people.
Never sell your Bitcoin. I'm telling you right now, please, anybody out there, not tooting the horn or anything, but please never, ever, 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 never, ever sell any of your crypto. Get loans against it. And it's not financial advice. This is just what, the 0.1% of wealthy, or the top 1/10 of 1% of the wealthiest people on the planet. They do not sell their assets. They get loans against their assets. So if you have one Bitcoin, I'm going to use round numbers. You have one Bitcoin right now. You're able to take a loan out on that just because you have the collateral of up to something like $50,000 on that. But I think that's dangerous, because if it drops to 50K, then you're going to get margin called. So if you take 30,000 as a loan out on one Bitcoin, and then next year it goes to 200,000, then you'll be able to take 60,000 out, or 50,000 the next year. And then if it climbs up to 750, you'll be able to take out 200,000 loan, but you're just simply paying it off with the old money, getting a new loan to pay off the old loan. And as Bitcoin keeps going up in price, you just continually do what the wealthy elite do. They never, ever sell their assets, ever. They always get loans against them, whether it's gold, real estate, Bitcoin, art, cars, anything. That's what they do. And you know what? That interest is deductible off of your tax return. So let's say you got a loan for $25,000 or $30,000 off of $100,000 quote Bitcoin. You're able to write that off. So that $1,500 or $2,000, $3,000 in interest, depending on what area who you decide to take the loan from, that's completely deductible. And there's no sale event. So there's never a capital gain event that occurs during that. Now, again, it's not financial advice. It's just how the wealthy operate. It's pure and simple. That's how they operate. They never sell their assets. They only get loans against their assets. Why would I have a ledger? Wait, go back to that. I have a ledger, but I don't know how could you have I don't know how to get my Bitcoin off like Coinbase. How can you not know how to get your Bitcoin off Coinbase? Just send it to your ledger. Come on, man. That's ridiculous. I have a ledger, but it's too hard to get it off. I'm not smart. Well, if you're smart enough to have a ledger and you're smart enough to have a Coinbase account, that's just ridiculous, your talk right there. You can't have that level of knowledge to even initiate a ledger and have a Coinbase account, but you don't know how to swap those two and get one key from another as a deposit address and swap and send that. That's ridiculous. Now you're taking the piss right now. Seriously. Like if you like, that's the most basic, simplest thing ever. If you don't know how to do that, you're going to have to interact in this world. Never sell your Bitcoin. Always, every asset you have, your house, don't sell it. Get loans against it. Don't sell anything ever. Get loans against the collateral you have or the equity you have inside something. This is how the 0.1% operate. They never sell their assets. They loan against it because next year it's going to be more valuable than last year. Whether it be a 1, 3, 5% accrual rate going up, or whether it be Bitcoin that's running at 30% or 50% per year, it doesn't matter. If you bought a house in the 1800s or a castle, you could always at least predict it's going to go up 2 or 3% per year. And you could get a 1 or 2% loan against that, knowing that your 3% would outrun that. Or 2% loan against $1 million castle. Great. I'll take the 20 grand a year and I'll pay you back. That's just operating expense stuff. And then if I got all these other things too, and then you start adding them, I got, a couple 1,000 ounces of gold that the family sent down through. Okay, we'll put them on. Okay, you can get a loan against that at 10 or 20%. Nobody in the wealthy world ever sells their assets. And they're smart enough to know that the tax deductions off of all the interest they're paying back on all these loans is also deductible off everything. So just learn how big, old, incredibly large money operates. Even as a grasshopper, understand how the ultra wealthy operate and then try to mimic what they do. You're not going to buy a castle and a vineyard in the middle of France, but it's the same principle. They own property. They own a villa. They own estates. And it's the same as I own a house. I have some land. Okay, same, but different. But what's the principle? They loan against it. They get loans against it. They don't sell it. So anyway, I'm done. I'm off the high horse. Thank you, Ransom, for letting me ramble on that, but never sell your Bitcoin. I just wanted to go in there. Please never sell your crypto. Loan against your crypto, because next year or next year or next year, it's always going to be more valuable than this year. And now, right now, they've just started these 24-month loans, which means if you get a loan today, at the price it is today, in 2 years, do you think it'll go up or down compared to where it is? So
I don't know. You guys should have listened to this guy that time traveled from 2025 as he explains.
Yeah, what is he saying now? You said it's a revamped or kind of changed.
Yes, here's an article that says somebody changed it and nobody knows who did it. And I guess that happened.
I've read the original, so I could tell you if it's been changed, actually.
It said
I read
it was
the original multiple times because I thought it was so interesting.
Right. It was updated October 27th of 2019. But yeah, even so, even if it's, been altered, it talks about the increasing value from 2013 up to 2025, where it would keep going up to 1,000, then to 5,000, 10,000, etc. So whoever wrote this in 2012, yeah, here it is. $1,000, 25, 10,000, 2017, 100,000, 2019. And he's saying 1 million in 2021, but
Yeah, they
that
missed
didn't
the mark
happen.
on that, but just move it forward one Bitcoin halving and then just mark +4 on that.
But yeah, other than that, did pretty good. It got up to 100,000, didn't it?
Yeah, and with the institutional adoption with coming in, I mean, all projections are taking it to 1 million and by 2030. So again, if it just to not financial advice, I'm just saying, think how the wealthy elite operate here. And all cryptos are like all boats are going to rise during this thing. And especially if you just use the old school, stable, old, like, Ethereum and XRP and Litecoin and these kind of thing. Just the old schools that have been around since the beginning. Those are the ones that are going to still operate moving forward. Other ones come and go. So if we're sitting at 100,000 Bitcoin now, and you're getting a loan at, let's say, 25% LTV, which is a loan to value ratio. So you're going to get $25,000 for that loan of owning 1 Bitcoin. If that moves up to 1 million, the price is never going to drop back down to 100,000 again. So you could take out 250,000 or 200,000 on your loan for the next time that it reaches 1 million. So if you have 200,000, then let's say, okay, the projections are going from 100,000 to 250 to 500 to 750 to 1 million by 2030. So using that same math of just what's predicted on these $250,000 jumps moving up, 1 Bitcoin, now you're getting a $25,000 loan against. Okay, you can use that for daily expenses. You can buy more Bitcoin. You can do whatever you want. Next year, or next year, because you can do 24-month loans now. Do you think in 2 years from now, Bitcoin is going to be more valuable than it is today? And in my opinion, is absolutely incredibly, not even a question, 1 iota, not in my analysis and all the figures and numbers and projections and business forecasts and business interviews and everybody in that industry, it's going higher. So you can pay that loan back and get another. So if it goes to 250,000 and you're taking 25% LTV, you're up near 50,000. And then the next year, if it goes to 750,000, you're taking 25% LTV on that, or loan to value ratio, you're approaching, $100,000. When it reaches 1 million and you're going to take 20 or 25% out, you're coming up to $220,000 or $250,000. I think a lot of people could live on $250,000 a year. I mean, can you live on $500,000 a year? My question is, why shouldn't we all live on $500,000 a year? At this point, when you're going to start to loan back in, and then some of these ridiculous figures I hear, like 10 million Bitcoin. I mean, if you're going to do a 10% on that LTV ratio, like you're talking, you can't live on $1 million a year. Everybody should be able to live on $1 million a year. That should be our base standard anyway. This should be our lifestyles. But do you think it'll go to 1 million, or you think it'll go to 12 million in a couple of years from then? Then you take out the loan, you could pay it back. Like that operating capital, I don't know if I could even spend $1 million without being an asshole, really. I mean, there's a point of living and having everything you need in your house and the people to help you maintain, have, people around to work the gardens, forest farm, take the forest and turn it into a farm and do all these things. But at some point, that Bitcoin is going to outstrip what you can spend, even if you're getting loans against it. And that's the whole thing, while the wealthy have so much money and people are so angry at them for having so much money. They're just playing within the rules that are set already. And they had so much asset laying around for their family, passing it down over the last several hundred years, that they never run out of money, because they're always getting loans against stuff that's just continuing to go up and up and up and up in price, to the point where they're becoming stupid with the spending. And that's why you see what they call the leisure class, because there's nothing else for them to do. It's just like invent ways to spend money, because they got so much of it. They don't know what to do with it. Literally, they don't know what to do with it. Like where we down here right now, damn it, man, I need to go to work. I need to get this. I need to pay my electric bill. Shit, I own the electric company. I didn't have anything else to buy except the whole electric company. I bought the entire lines and everything. I bought all the transmission stations. I bought the entire electric company. I didn't have any money. I had all this money I didn't know what to do with. So I bought an electric company so I could get another loan. You know, and then they're like, well, we got more money because the electric company like tripled in value, quadrupled in value. So now what? I think I'm going to buy a fleet of blimps or something, you know. This is where it gets absurd when it goes off to this direction. But 2050, all right, 7,361,000, 8 million. Yeah, I mean, if you're taking 10% or 20% of that, so 20%, take 10%. 10%, can you live off 800,000 a year? Or is that outside your budget? And you know, by waiting for that on a 2-year loan, that thing's going to go up to 10, so you could pay it back. That's why this whole thing about Bitcoin and Bitcoin citadels is, it's real in theory. In fact, though, where's the locations? And anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. I think we went over time a little bit, but 2033, yeah, 2.7 million or 2.8 million, 3.3 million. Again, even if you're going to get a 10% LTV, which is like 10% of the loan to value, most people would take 25% or 30%. Can you live on $300,000 a year? What if you wanted to double that and go to a 20% LTV, 600,000 a year? Imagine the good you could do for this world with that kind of money, like the people you could help. That's the whole point of it. It's not about, you know, at some point you're going to have everything paid for. You really can't spend the money. There's like, you have so much money, you don't know what to do with it. At that point, you got to think outside the box of, it's not about what I can do with it, about what I can do to help other people. And I think that's where, you know, I got off track, was what Ransom was talking about in those silos. At some point, you know, there's got to be a betterment for humanity somewhere where the available resources can be used for the good of humanity versus the nefarious or these like dark entities. Like if we all thought like that and everybody had this knowledge of how the 1% invests their money. Like I never learned anything about this in school. I was taught by other people. What do you do with this money or these assets? I never look for money. I only look for assets. And there's a huge difference in the mind frame of that. Of I never want to buy a thing. I don't want to own something. I don't want to chase. I only want to own assets that can generate loan value off of them. And it's only come to me in the last couple of years. So don't think I've been like this for years and years in my whole life. It's just dropped into my lap. So I thought I would share it with you because I'm looking at money in a different way. Like, you know, I gone to a couple courses on those who are kind of high earners, and I learned a lot, but they never went into this. Like, this is something incredibly different on only get loans against your assets. Like I jumped into a few courses many, many years ago about, you know, use your mind, do this, focus on this, manifest this, do okay. But they never taught about the money. They never told you about the money. It was about how to make money, but once you got them, it was never about how to keep it. It was always about buy this low, sell this high. That's what all we're ever told. Buy low, sell high. That's it. How about buy this asset and hold it? Even your stocks, you know, any kind of stock shares any shares that you own, bonds or anything, you never have to sell it. I mean, if the price is dropping, obviously you've got some kind of stop there where you want to get out of your position. But if you're holding something like MicroStrategy or any kind of like Coca-Cola, for example, you can get loans against that. So you never have to sell it. So let's say you have 1,000 shares of Coca-Cola and you want to get a loan against it, get 10 or 20% of the loan value against that and just use that money. Never sell anything. Those are going to continuously go up and up and up, and they always have, and then they split, you know, and then you get double the amount of shares, and those finally make their way back up to the same price point that you had before. So the misnomer is, in school they teach you buy something low, sell something high, but then they trap you in the capital gains thing. When in your life have you heard buy an asset and get a loan against it, and that's all you focus on ever? You don't. They don't teach that in school. I've never heard it except outside some people that I was lucky enough to bump into. Never sell anything you own that has an asset value behind it. Get loans against it. This world we're moving into, they want to strip everything from you. Anyway, I guess that's my cue out.